Following on from the previous video, the volume is approximately this thing here. So when j equals 1, this thing here will loop around 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So this point here will correspond to this. We would put this location into the function. It will jump to the surface. So that will give us a height, and then you times it by delta x. That will then give us an area. So we can imagine this as like a strip of paper, a 2D piece of paper, and then you've got this piece here. So that corresponds to this. Put it into the function. It will jump to the surface. Times it by delta x. It will give you the second strip of paper, and then for the third one, it would be putting this into the function. It would jump to the surface times delta x. That will then give us the third strip of paper. So we've got the 3 areas. So now increase j by 1. So when you increase j by 1 again, we would then cycle this thing around 3 times again. 1, 2, 3. So that's 1, 2, 3. So it's the same idea. So now we need to look at when j equals 2. So we need to look at when j equals 2. So when j equals 2, our first point will be 1, 2, 1, 2. So our first point will be 1 across, 2 up, 1, 2. So our first point would be this. So that corresponds to this point here. Put that location. That location there is 4, 3. So you would put this into the function, and then this whole thing here will give you 44. So when you put it into the function, when you put our location into the function, it will jump to the surface. So that's our height. And then when you so that's our height. And then when you times it by delta x, it will then give you a sheet of paper for this piece here. And then for the second location, so for the second location would be 6, 2. So the second location when I equals 2 would be right here. So the second location would be here. Put it into the function, it will jump to the surface. And then when you times it, so this thing here gives you the height, which is this height here, and then times it by delta x. That will then give you the width. When you times it by delta x, it will then give you the area, the strip of paper. And then for the third one, when I equals 3, that corresponds to this point here. Put it into the surface, put it into the function again, it will jump to the surface, times it by delta x again, then it will give you another area. And then you're summing up all 3 areas. So currently we've got the 3 heights. And when you times it by delta x, it will give you an area. And then our second height is 84. Times it by delta x again, it will give you the second area, which happens to be this. And then our third height, times it by delta x, it will give you the third area. So this whole thing here, when j equals 2, will be 536. So what we've done is this. Hang on. What we've done is this. This thing here sums up all 3 strips. 1, 2, 3. So when j equals 1, so when j equals 1, it gives us the first 3 strips, and then don't forget this gets incremented, and then it will give us a second set of 3 strips. But let's look at when j equals 1. When j equals 1, this thing here is really the summation of 3 strips. So it's really an area. So this is like 3 sheets of paper. And then when you times it by delta y, delta y is like the depth. So when you times it by delta y, it will give you a volume like this. So it will give you some sort of depth. So really, hang on. So when you look at this thing here, hang on. When you look at this thing here, you've got your sheet of paper here. This is our first sheet, and then so this is our first sheet here. When you times it by delta, so you've got 3 strips. You've summed up 3 strips. So that's your 3 strips there. And then when you times it by delta y, it will give you a depth. It will give you this depth. You can see this depth here, delta y. So really, that's like a box here. And then when you times those 3 sheets of paper by delta y, it gives it some sort of depth. So really, you're summing up 3 boxes. So going back down here, hang on. Going back down here, hang on. So let me start again here. So this thing here gives us 3 sheets of paper, 1, 2, 3, and when you times it by delta y, it gives it a bit of depth. In our case, our delta y was 1. If you scrolled back all the way up there, delta y was 1, so it has a depth of 1. So you would get the 3 sheets of paper. Remember, when j equals 1, the 3 sheets of paper has an area of 506. It has an area of 506. These 3 sheets, and then when you times it by this, it will give you a depth. But it just turns out that delta y equals 1, so it makes no difference. But it is a volume. When you times it by delta y, it is a volume. It's just the depth is 1. So now you have a volume. So that's for j equals 1. When j equals 2, our 3 strips will have an area of 536, and then for the second time around, you times it by a depth, which happens to delta y equals 1, so it has a depth of 1. So when you times it by delta y, it will give you a volume, and really you're summing up all the volumes. So all the volumes will be approximately be this. Okay.